product for the entire time they've had it, to now say that it is unlawful. Would the director agree that that is something that the Fifth Circuit is very well going to look at and say that is an overstep of the executive branch over legislative authority? I yield back.
You may answer the question.
As with the bump stock case, it is in litigation. Different circuits have come out different ways on that, and I think there's a petition for certiorari before the Supreme Court. ATF's position on that, I mean the department's position, is laid out in hundreds of pages of briefs. The first ruling, which actually came out of a district court in the Fifth Circuit on the stabilizing base rule, found that it lived within the statute and was lawful under the APA, at least as a preliminary injunction matter.
But the Fifth Circuit has held that has said that it is
courts,
violative.
again,
Yeah.
The gentleman yields. Ms. Scanlon, you have 5 minutes for questioning.
My constituents in our country are reeling from the daily toll of gun violence. A rational person should expect Congress to ask the head of ATF to come to Congress and testify about what we can do to end this daily recurring national tragedy. But that's not why this hearing was called. This hearing was called to attack ATF and its leadership, to undermine ATF's ability to do its job. It's been called to complain about technicalities and paperwork that actually save lives. Second Amendment extremists often claim we don't need new laws, we just need to enforce the laws that are on the books. But that's what a well-funded and fully staffed ATF does. It's critical to enforcing the laws that are already on the books and stemming the carnage caused by unlawful and irresponsible gun sales that are used to kill more than 130 Americans every day. I want to focus today on important ATF tools that can check rogue gun dealers who profit from sales as they willfully enable violent crime with straw purchases and unlawful sales. And I know we have to move quickly because of timing, so if you want to submit additional information, we'd love to see that. More than 20 years ago, an ATF study showed that just 1% of federal firearms licensees, or FFLs, were the source of more than 60% of all guns traced to crime nationwide. Since then, congressional gag laws have prevented ATF from publicly sharing data that can be used to examine patterns of gun trafficking or to identify gun dealers who profit from selling guns to criminals, whether directly or indirectly. However, the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence recently analyzed 2 decades of data about crime guns released by Pennsylvania, and that report confirmed the trend still holds. And in Pennsylvania, just 1% of gun dealers were the source of 50% of crime guns. Can you briefly tell us how ATF uses crime or trace data to prioritize dealers for compliance inspections and prevent firearms from being diverted into the illegal market?
ATF is committed to transparency to the extent allowed under the laws passed by Congress. And I would point out that recently, just several months ago, under the direction of the Attorney General and the President, ATF published the single largest compendium of information on crime guns ever put in one place in the United States in one of our firearms trafficking and commerce reports, Volume 2. It goes state by state. There are 40 cities. We will do analyses for any cities that weren't included in the first 40, and it tells the story in a way that hasn't been told before with data as to how firearms get from lawful commerce to crime scenes. We take that kind of data and use it as part of our crime gun intelligence program to try and target as best we can, and we can do better at this. We need to keep striving to push ourselves to be better. As best we can, our very limited resources to try and stop that flow of unlawful firearms so that we're not focusing on the vast majority of firearms dealers, which are law-abiding businesses. And we're focusing as much as possible either on those that willfully violate the law, but also, it's important to understand, to harden the targets because even if you're a law-abiding firearms dealer, you're being targeted by a criminal firearms trafficking organization to help them to follow the rules which are designed to protect them from being victimized even unknowingly. So we work collaboratively with firearms dealers all over the country on this.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the gun dealers that perhaps is not an unwilling victim is a Philadelphia gun shop called The Firing Line. And in this report published concerning Pennsylvania crime guns, it was determined that 1,800 crime guns were traced to this one gun dealer between 1999 and 2020. A 2017 ATF inspection report of the dealer, which I have here, found multiple repeat violations, including willfully transferring firearms to prohibited purchasers, facilitating the straw purchase of firearms, missing firearms, and a failure to respond to ATF trace requests. Now, obviously, this is before your tenure. But despite that record, the Trump administration's ATF issued a warning to the dealer instead of revoking its license. They got a stern talking to, but they continue to profit from their sale of guns that are used in crimes in Pennsylvania and beyond. So Congress has given ATF authority to revoke licenses. Can serious violations such as willful transfer trigger the zero tolerance policy that ATF is working on now?
The key word that you used is what Congress said, which is willful. When we find that firearms licensees are willfully violating the laws that Congress has passed, and we have articulated several, I think 5 specific violations, although willful conduct can be broader than that in certain circumstances. That's what we try to do with respect to targeting our resources with respect to filing a notice of revocation. After the notice is filed, the licensee has the right to a hearing and to go to federal district court as well.
Thank you. And Chairman, I see my time has expired, but I have 2 unanimous consent requests. The first is I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a report from the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence entitled Uncovering the Truth About Pennsylvania Crime Guns.
So ordered.
Okay. I also seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the video played by Mr. Cicilline at last week's Judiciary Committee markup that demonstrates how the gun industry markets and many gun buyers actually use the stabilizing braces not as assistive technology for disabled veterans, but as a way to convert large format pistols into short-barreled rifles and evade the National Firearms Act.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Young lady yields.
Yes.
Next, I'd like to take 5 minutes to ask a few questions. Director Dettelbach, are you familiar with Operation Fearless from a decade ago?
I'm sorry.
Operation Fearless from a decade ago, are you familiar with that?
I don't know that I'm familiar with the details of that particular operation. If you start talking about it, maybe I'll be reminded of the name, but not as I sit here.
So the largest state newspaper in Wisconsin wrote about it, suggested a lack of planning and oversight in regards to trying to get people who were running drugs, running guns, stuff like that. I take it you're not familiar with that?
Again, by name, if you could, was this related to a certain type of investigative technique? I might know it not by the name, but by the facts, as you said.
Yeah, so it happened in Milwaukee, and they found out later after the investigative story was put out by the Journal Sentinel in Milwaukee that this was actually being done in 5 other cities also. And are these type of operations still going on around the country?
Not knowing the type, what type of operation. If you tell me just in general, I can.
So failed operation, Operation Fearless, is an ATF violent crime impact team opened a storefront in Milwaukee neighborhood.
A storefront.
Yep.
So with respect to, and I do remember some of the public